What has happened, everyone? James Hancock here. I'm back to review episode 5 of season 5 of The Expanse, an episode titled Down and Out. We're officially at the halfway mark of this amazing season, and if you've not yet watched the episode, go do so because it will be going heavily into spoilers. But it seems like Amazon's strategy this season with dropping episodes is to release them around 7 p.m. Eastern time, the day before they're officially supposed to be unveiled. But for the purposes of these videos, the moment the episode's available to the general public, I feel like all spoilers are fair game as long as I give viewers an appropriate warning. At any rate, I hope everyone had an amazing Christmas. I had an absolute blast down in Virginia visiting my family, but I'm officially back in action and I've started working my way through the press screener for Cobra Kai Season 3. My review for that will be up once the show's dropped because I can't discuss it without going into spoilers. But let's get into The Expanse. I didn't see any major news related to the show between last week and this one, but Wes Chatham has been very generously doing a lot of interviews related to the show. I read one over at Screen Rant, and he also appeared on an after-show interview on Amazon's YouTube channel alongside writer Ty Frank. So if you're dying for some more Expanse content apart from the show, definitely check out those interviews. But getting down to the episode at hand, this season continues to hum right along with one great episode after another. This latest chapter is written by Matthew Rasmussen, who's been working on this show in a variety of roles over the years, from story editor to writer's assistant, as well as scripting episodes like the 4th episode of season 4. And this episode was directed by Jeff Woolnoll, if I'm saying that correctly, who has directed several other episodes in the past. And I have to say that on the whole, the staff of writers and directors involved on the show, they continue to impress me on a weekly basis. What's crucial is how they all seem to be on the same page creatively, unlike some other recent shows I've seen where it feels like individual writers are trying to pull a franchise in opposing directions. And of course, it's always helpful when you have a great series of books setting the tone for everyone involved. But this specific tale was very much about the aftermath of Marco's attack as aftershocks continued to travel across the surface of Earth. In the comments last week, I noticed a lot of folks criticizing the lack of detail about the scale of the devastation that was described so well in Nemesis games. But I think these details are going to continue to be teased out as Amos and Peaches explore their ravaged environment. And if you're paying close attention, there were little details on news feeds and in conversations that clue us into the extent of the devastation on Earth. But it's my sincere hope that the show does not tap the brakes on all these gory details, because it was the scope and the severity of this destruction that gave the novel Nemesis games so much of its incredible power. But in that these details might end up being spoilers for this season, I'll hold off for now on discussing that any further, apart from what we saw in this specific episode. But in terms of format and structure, we continue to follow our characters on their largely separate journeys, apart from Bobby and Alex, who are enjoying a nice team up, as well as Amos and Peaches. And I know there are probably some viewers out there who want nothing more than to see all of our central characters back on the Rossi, working together as a team. But for me personally, I love how the story of Nemesis games gives each character a chance to shine on their own without anyone hogging the spotlight. Whether they live or die, it's entirely up to them. So let's go through all these separate plot lines. My favorite's down on the Earth's surface with Amos and Peaches, so I'll save that for last. But I must admit, I'm engaged with all the separate storylines. None of the plot lines feel like a drag on the overall momentum of the show. If anything, they all contribute really interesting ingredients to the overall experience. We see the drummer is suffering from some very mixed feelings about Marco. She had him in an airlock and let him go, and feels responsible for the devastation that he's caused. And as she watches the news, we hear that the worst is yet to come for Earth in the aftermath of the attack. What's interesting is how through her crew, we can see the wide array of Belter's feelings about what Marco did, in particular the assassination of Fred Johnson. Drummer very emphatically says, "Fred was a good man. Period, irrespective of where he came from." So clearly Belters do not all walk in lockstep politically, but they will all share in some of the blame for Marco's crimes. And the last we see of Drummer and her crew for now is her decision to accept Marco's invite to talk. Jim Holden didn't have a ton to do this episode apart from assembling a new crew for the Rocinante. He's desperate to find Naomi, and to make matters even worse, he's received no word about his family on Earth. The entire Montana grid has collapsed. And it's little details like this that viewers need to pay attention to, as the problems with collapsing infrastructure lead to potential starvation, panic, you name it. But as Holden and his new team get ready to start their hunt, Naomi finally manages to get through to him and warns him that the Rocinante has been sabotaged. There's no location data for her, unfortunately, but at least Holden and his crew, they don't explode. And he now knows that Naomi is a prisoner. And I think that alone is going to be all the fuel that Holden needs to turn into the badass that we all know and love. Once Holden's on the warpath, he basically becomes one of the most heroic individuals in the entire solar system. And speaking of Naomi, we see that she refuses to sit idly by in spite of being a prisoner with a few limited freedoms. From our conversations, we hear one really interesting point of view that I think is really important for viewers to keep in mind. Due to their body's physical limitations, Belters on the whole are going to be unable to participate in and reap the rewards of colonizing all the ring worlds. Naomi saw firsthand on Illis just how difficult it is for Belters ever to leave the comfort of space, and for those who are strong enough to adapt on New World, at that point, they will cease to be Belters. So what we're seeing is this incredibly crucial moment in history where even the idea of being a Belter might be facing extinction. Before the ring gates and the ring worlds, the Belters played this crucial role working on the various asteroids and moons of the outer planets, but now their future is completely uncertain, and that's one of the key drivers in Marco's actions. He's trying to maintain the relevance of the Belter culture moving forward. So as always, the genius of this franchise is allowing us to see and appreciate the points of view of opposing factions in incredibly nuanced ways. And meanwhile, out by the Hungaria asteroids in the belt, Alex and Bobby try and stay hidden amidst the many bright and shiny rocks out there as they pursue the Barkeith and its escort after their transponders have been turned off. What they eventually find are some more ships, including some NCRN destroyers. Bobby suspects that they have found the Free Navy and that they're most likely Belters aboard a lot of these Martian ships, but it's important to appreciate the size and scope of this conspiracy as it continues to take on alarming dimensions. What's also worth noting as more details come to light is how the Barkeith is hauling ass away from the sun while its escort remains behind. At any rate, Alex and Bobby get pinged, so they soon find themselves completely juiced up and hauling ass away from a missile. And in spite of the amazing speed of their ship, they're unable to outrun it, so Alex does the only thing that he can. He dumps their reactor core to give the missile a better target, creating the perfect cliffhanger ending as their ship floats off into space. But as I mentioned earlier, my favorite storyline this episode featured Amos and Peaches as they try and escape this prison for supervillains and reach the surface before the whole building comes crashing down around their ears. So with the help of a few guards and a cybernetically enhanced inmate that Amos quickly dubs Tiny, they come up with this strategy of shooting holes in panels which allow Tiny to reach in, rip the panels free, exposing the emergency ladder going up the elevator shaft. And I just love the overall design of Tiny's character and how we could see metal chunks of his body through the holes in his skin, and how his veins would pop out and get engorged anytime he used his enhanced strength. Amos, who's usually the most muscular dude on the show, looked genuinely slender by comparison. And to all their horror, they realize that the upper floors of the building have been completely wiped out, and that the sky above them is gray with ash, much like a nuclear winter. That's another detail to keep in mind when it comes to overall devastation. With ash in the air, the sun doesn't get through, crops won't grow, and starvation can kill someone just as easily as a direct hit from an asteroid. But Tiny, he finally makes his move and goes on a killing rampage. Peaches juices up and prepares for battle, but after taking a few gunshots from a guard, Tiny gets suplexed by Amos right down the elevator shaft. It was easily the funniest moment of the entire season. So after telling the guard to go look for their child and wrapping up Clarissa Mao in a blanket, now all that remains is figuring out how to get the hell off this planet in a world that's going to rapidly descend into a state of total chaos, which I'm sure we'll see more of in the next episode. So once again, this episode just rocked. Season 5 is shaping up in my mind to be the strongest of all 5 seasons so far, and fingers crossed the show can sustain this incredible momentum. I'm absolutely loving it, as well as all the incredibly enthusiastic comments I've been reading to my previous videos on this season, because these days there are all kinds of franchises out there with all kinds of fans, but I have to say that the Expanse fandom, while it might be smaller than for something that's more mainstream, I have to say that fans of the Expanse have to be some of the most diehard, hardcore sci-fi fans I've ever encountered or talked to in all my life. So many thanks for watching my video, greatly appreciated. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, and as I mentioned before, I'll be back in action later this week with a review of Cobra Kai Season 3. But thanks again for watching, I greatly appreciate it, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.